Class is the most fundamental piece of Python. It is a user-defined blueprint from which objects are created. Classes provide a means of bundling data and functionality together. The reason lies behind the concept of object-oriented programming. Everything in Python is an object, such as integers, lists, dictionaries, functions, and so on. Every object has a type, and the object types are created using classes. Creating a new class creates a new type of object, allowing new instances of that type to be made. These classes have data attributes, which define what is needed to create an instance of a class, and methods that define how to interact with the instances of a class. If Python classes interest you enough, then this is a class you would not want to miss. Watch out for some valued information coming your way through the course on Python classes.
If you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, I want to request you to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so that you don't miss out any new updates or video releases from Great Learning. If you enjoy this video, show us some love and like this video. Knowledge increases by sharing, so make sure you share this video with your friends and colleagues. Make sure to comment on the video, any queries or suggestions, and I will also respond to your comments.
Hello learners, welcome to the course of Python classes. My name is Gaurav and once again welcome to Great Learning. Now moving to the agenda, first we will be knowing about what is class. So basically a class is a blueprint for an object. Then we will discuss about object. So as we know that object is a real world entity which is having attributes and behavior. For example, the camera I am using is an object. Similarly the specs is also an object and many more. After understanding class as an object, we will see constructor in Python. So in Python, we are having init method. We'll discuss it. And then next, we are having inner class. So inner class is basically a class inside a class, or you can say that a nested class. After that, we will discuss a very important concept of object-oriented programming system, which is inheritance. So basically inheritance, a subclass acquires the properties and behavior from its superclass. And at last, we will see abstract class. So by default, Python doesn't support abstract class. So in order to make an abstract class, you have to import the module. So this is the basic idea about the Python classes. So now let's understand what is class. So as I already told you that class is nothing but a blueprint for an object. So let's take an example. Let's suppose that if you want to make a mobile phone, then you have to make a blueprint first, right? So basically a blueprint will be a class, and then from the same blueprint you can make different mobile phones. So different mobile phones will have different models and different specification, and that will be a object basically. So from one class you can create more than one object. So here is the example of mobile phone. So in order to make a mobile phone, first we have created a blueprint, and from that blueprint we have created different models. So this is the basic idea about the class, and then little bit idea about object too. Now in order to create a class, you have to write a class keyword, right? So you will write a class keyword and then class name. So here you can see that creating a class, I have written class keyword and the name. So here I have taken the name edtech. So here you can see that I have written here pass, right? So basically if you are not writing pass here, you will get an error. So in order to avoid error, I have written here pass. So basically this class doesn't have any content. Okay. Now a class contains variables and methods. So what are variables? So variables are nothing but an attributes. So let's take an example how to create a class. So let's suppose that we are having a class of human. So I'll just write a class and then I will write the human. So as we know that humans are having eyes, ears, and then they are having names also, right? So here the variables, or you can say attributes, will be eyes, nose, and the names. Also humans are having certain behaviors such as talk, sleep, and walk. So we can create a method on the basis of the behaviors. So this is the basic idea about the class. So now let's see how to create a classes in Jupyter Notebook. So here I'm using Jupyter Notebook. So I'll just go on this button, and this is the new option. I will click on this, and then I will click on Python 3. And let me change the name here. So instead of Untitled 25, I will give here the name Python underscore class. So now let's create a class. So as I told you that for creating a class, you have to just write here class and then the class name. So class name, let's suppose I'm writing here student. And now if you're not writing anything and executing, you will get an error as I told you. So if I don't want any content in my class, I will just write here pass. So you can see that my class has been created. So after understanding class, now let's understand what is object. So as I already told you that object is a real world entity which is having attributes, behavior and identity. And now coming to the attributes, attributes reflects the properties of an object and behavior represents the method of an object. Also, identity gives a unique name for every object. So this is the basic idea about object. Now, moving to the next point, it is an instance of a class. So I have already given you the example of mobile phone. When you are creating mobile phone, you are having a blueprint and from that particular blueprint you are creating different mobile phones of different specification and different models. So basically you are creating an instance of class and which is also known as class object. So from a class you can create a class object. Now moving to the last point, we already know that everything inside this world can be treated as an object: desktop, camera, mobile, watch, table, keyboard. So after understanding the concept of classes and objects, let's see its implementation. So now let's see the practical example. So let me write here class, and once again I will give the class name as a student. So I will write here capital S and then student. Now let's suppose I don't have any content in my class, so I'll just write here pass. Now after creating class, how to create an object? So we know that an object is an instance of class. So what I will do for creating an object, I will just write here the class name student and parenthesis. So this is basically my object and I will assign it into a variable. So let me write here S1. So as I told you that there can be multiple objects, right? So we are not having only one student. There can be various students, right? So if you want to create multiple object also, then you can create here. Then I will write here S2 and the class name, that is student. Similarly, you can write S3, S4 and so forth. So after creating object of a class, if you are seeing student, then student will be having ID, its name and then branch in which he is studying. So what I will do here, I will write here S1 dot ID and let me give the ID as 1. Then I will write here S1 dot, let's suppose name, and I will give the name as Tony here. And let me write here S1 dot department. I will write here content. Now let's take one more variable. So I'll just write here S1 dot fees. Let me write 78,000. Now if I want to print it out, so what I will do, now I will just simply write here print, and inside that I will write here S1 dot ID, and let me copy and paste. Instead of S1 dot ID, I'll just copy this S1 dot name, and then I will also change S1 dot name from S1 to department, and the same goes for S1 dot ID, right? So now if I'm executing this, so on execution you can see that S1 is having ID number S1, name is Tony, and the department is content, and the fees is also mentioned here. So this is for the object S1. If you want to print the details for object S2 also, you can do the same thing. So let me copy and paste the same thing. I'll just copy it, Control C, and let me paste, Control V. Now instead of S1 I will just write here S2.id, S2.name, S2.department, S2.fees, and I will change it. So instead of Tony, let me change the name at admin, and the fees also let me put one more zero. And now if I want to print it out, then I will write here S2. Yeah, so on execution you can see that I am getting the S2 name as admin, ID as 2, department as content, and then fees. So here you can see that we are getting the output, but this is the longer approach. So we have to do the coding in a wise manner so that we can avoid this much lengthy code. We will see how we can avoid this much lengthy code. But as of now, let's take one more example to understand class as an object. Yeah. So let me create a class. So I will just write here class, and let me write here the class name as Audi. Now, As I told you that class will have attributes as well as methods. So let me create a method. So how to create a method inside a class? I will just write here def. So let's suppose if I'm having a car, and class Audi can have behavior of starting and stopping. So I'll just write here def start. And now what I will do here, inside this function, I will just write here print, and I will write let's start with car. So we know that this is basically a function or method inside a class. Now we are having a class, then we have to create an object. So how to create an object? Just I will write here Audi and then parenthesis open and close, and let me assign it into a variable a1. So this is my object, right? Now if you want to access the class method or class function, what you have to do, this is my variable, right? I will just write here a1 dot start. So do you think we will print let's start with car? Let me execute. So here you can see that we are getting an error. Why? Because here you have to write self. So what happens here when you are writing self? Let me execute it first. So when you are writing here self, A1 is my object, right? Basically object variable. So instead of self, A1 will be assigned. Okay, so that means it will print let's start with car. Similarly, if I am creating one more variable, that is A2, and I will write here Audi, that is the class name, open and close parenthesis. And once again, if I'm writing here A2 dot start, so what do you think? What will print here? Again, it will print let's start with car. So what will happen here? This is my start, right? I've written here A2 dot start. So A2 will go inside this self, and then it will print let's start with car. So you can see that two times we are getting let's start with car. So this is the basic idea about classes and object. So after understanding the concept of classes and object, now let's see what is constructor. So basically in a simple word, I can say that constructor is used to allocate the values to the data variables of a class. Also, it is mainly used to instantiate an object. So basically if you want to create a constructor in Python, then we are using init method. So I will write here underscore underscore init underscore underscore and then open and close parenthesis. So basically what does init method do? As soon as you are creating a new object from the class, it will automatically run. We'll see in practical example. So let's understand the syntax. So in order to create an init method, first you have to write a reserved word, that is def, and then we will write underscore underscore init underscore underscore, and inside that we'll write self. So basically we know that self parameter is a reference to the current instance of a class. In simple word, whatever the object you are creating from the class, instead of self, the object will be allocated. So this is the basic idea about constructor. So now let's see it into the practical example. So let's start with constructor. So I will write here constructor, and let me comment it down. So I will use hash. Now after this, what I will do, I will create a class. So let me create a class of an let's say employee. So what I will do here, I will create a constructor. So I will just write here def underscore underscore init underscore underscore, and then I will write open and close parenthesis. Now after this, I want to create an object for this employee class. So what I will do here, I'll just write here, let's suppose even, and then I'll write here employee. And here you can see that my object has been created. So I was telling you that as soon as you are creating a new object, init method will run instantly. So what will happen here, if I am running it, then you can see that I'm getting an error because I didn't write here self. So I have to write here self, right? So if I'm running it, yeah. So if I'm running it, you can see that again I am getting an error because I have to write here pass. So now if I'm running it, you can see that now I'm not getting any error. So as I told you that whenever I'm creating a new object, it will run. But how we will get to know? We'll get to know if I'm writing here print statement. So if I'm writing here print statement, and if I'm writing inside this welcome to Create Learning, now you can see that if I'm running it, is printing welcome to Create Learning. So as you are creating a new object, your init method will run at that time. So this is the basic idea about a init. Now let me remove this. Now what I will do here, so I told you that class will have attributes as well as method. So let me create some attributes here. So if I'm writing here self dot id, so employee will be having a id, right? So let me write here id1. So basically this is a parameter, right? So I will write here id1, and after that I will write here self dot what will employee will have salary. So I will write here salary. So let me write here salary1. So basically this is the parameter that I am creating. So I will write here self dot salary is equal to salary1. Let me write one more parameter here, bonus. So I'll write here self dot bonus is equal to bonus1. Now after creating attributes, I want to print it out. So now what I will do here, you can see that I have already given the parameter here. So this is my employee, right? So instead of self, even will go, right? Now what about ID1 and salary? So I will just give here ID as 1 and then salary as, let's suppose, 50,000. Yeah. And I have to also write here bonus1 because I am having three parameters, that is ID, salary and bonus. So I'll just write here bonus1. And bonus is, let's suppose, here 4,000. Now if I'm executing it, you will see that there is nothing has been executed, right? Because I have to print it. So what I will do here, I'll just write here print, and I'll write here even dot id. Let me copy and paste, control C, control V, and instead of id I will write here salary. I'll write here bonus. So now the salary is 50,000 and then bonus is 4,000. So now let's understand the logic. So what will happen here? If you see, instead of self, even will go, ID1 is 1, salary1 is 50,000 and bonus1 is 4,000. So when I'm writing here self dot ID is equal to ID1, so here self is even. So even dot ID is equal to ID1. ID1 is here 1. So even dot ID is equal to 1. So 1 is allocated to even dot id. Similarly here even dot salary will be equal to 50,000 and then even dot bonus will be equal to 4,000. So in this way this is working, right? Now instead of id1, if you are writing here id, salary and then bonus, so what will be the output? Will you get an error? No. On execution, so on execution you can see that we are getting an error. Why? Because we have to also change here. So let me execute this and you are getting the output. So here you can write ID1, salary1, bonus1. But in general, you have seen that we are writing ID, salary, bonus. So don't confuse with this term, right? Self.id is equal to ID. So basically when I'm writing self.id and then if I'm creating an object, so it means even.id. And here this ID is the parameter. Similarly, this salary is the parameter, right? And I'm giving the parameter value here. So this is the basic idea about the constructor. So if you see here, this is the details for employee 1. What happens if I'm creating another employee? Let me copy and paste, and instead of ID I'm giving 2, and let's suppose his salary is 5 lakhs and then bonus is 40,000. And let me change here e2.id, e2.salary, e2.bonus. So on execution you can see that I'm getting my output. But what happens if you want to print the details for 1000 employees? So this will be a long code, right? So we have to find some method. So as I told you that in class we are having attributes and methods. So what I will do here, I will create a method inside a class employee. So what I will do here, I'll just write here def, yeah, and let me write the method name as display. So I'll write here display, or let me write here display details. Now, inside this method, what I will do, I will pass the self parameter. And then I will write here print self dot id, self dot salary, and then I will write here self dot bonus. Now I don't have to write this code every time, that print even dot id even dot salary. Then for the next object, if I'm creating, let's suppose e2, e3 and so forth, so we don't have to write this much code. So I will just remove this, and I will remove this too also. And now see, this method is present inside a class, right? So I have to call this method in order to print it. So I'll just write here even dot, method name is display details. So I'll just write display underscore details, and on execution you can see that I am getting my output as id as 1, salary as 50,000 and bonus as 4,000, right? Similarly for this one, once again let me copy and I will paste here. I'll write here e2. So you can see that this is the details of the e2 object. So using constructor and then method, we can short our code. So we don't have to write much longer code every time. So this is the basic idea about the constructor. So let's understand the concept of inner class. So a class inside a class is known as inner class or nested class. So basically, nested class can be hidden from the outer world. Also, there can be one or more inner classes inside a base class. So let's take an example to understand in a better way. So let's suppose we are having two classes, that is clock and battery. We know that clock needs battery in order to show the time, but battery cannot be used if we are not putting inside a clock. So basically here battery will be a inner class and clock will be your base class. So this is the basic idea about inner class. So let's see the implementation of inner class. So I will write inner class and let me comment it down. So for creating inner class, let me copy the previous class that I have created here. Now, so this was my class which contains attributes as well as methods. Now, let me create an inner class. So we know that a class inside a class is known as inner class. So this is my outer class, and inside this I will create my inner class. So let me give the class name as facility, and let me give some attributes to this class. So I'll just write here, first I will create a init method. So I'll just write here def underscore underscore init underscore underscore, and then I will write here self. Now an employee will get a facility, let's suppose travel. So I'll just write here self dot travel. Let's suppose that travel money is around 20,000, and then I will write here self dot pf is equal to 5,000. Now this is the attribute or variable of the facility class, that is my inner class. Now how to create an object of this inner class? So basically you can create an object of inner class in outside class. So this is my outside class. Now what I will do here, I have to create the object of inner class. So I'll just write here self dot, and let's suppose that variable name I will give here f1, and I will write here self dot facility, because facility is the class name of my inner class. So I'll just write here facility, right? So in this way I have created the object whose object variable is f1, right? So if you see here, I'm creating the object, right? Even. Even is my object. So even dot f1 is equal to even dot facility, right? So I will jump into this, and then even dot travel is equal to 20,000. Now if I want to print out the value of these attributes, what I have to do here? I will just write here even dot, and what's the object variable that I am having? f1. So I'll just write here f1 dot, and let's suppose if I want to print the travel, so I'll just write here travel, and let me use the print function. So I'll just write here print, and then I will put inside this print function. So on execution you can see that I am getting my travel value is 20,000. The same goes for the PF also. Let me copy and paste, and then I'll just write here PF. So this is the value for PF 5,000. So what exactly is happening here? As soon as I'm creating the object even will go here, even dot f1 is equal to self dot facility, that is even dot facility. Now Here I'm having event.f1.travel, right? So what will happen here? Event.f1 is equal to self.facility, that is event.facility. So I have jumped to the event.facility.travel, that is nothing but 20,000. So it will print the details. Similarly for E2 object, you can also do the same thing. Just replace it with E2 and then you will get the output of the same. Yeah, right. So this is the basic idea about the inner classes. So the only thing that you have to keep in mind that how to create an object for the inner classes. So I have created the object in outer class. So let's do some modification in this program. So as we know that a class will contain attribute and methods. So inside this inner class, if you see this, so this is my inner class, class facility, and I want to create a method. So what I will do here, I'll just write here def and let me write the method name as show here. So I'll just write here show and inside this I will write here self. So I just want to print the details, right? So I've given the function name as show. So I'll write here print self dot travel and then I will write here self dot pf. So now if I want to print these details, so what can I do? Let me remove this. So the object variable is even, so I'll just write here even dot and here the inner class object is f1, so I'll just write here f1 dot and what's the function name? Function name is show, so I'll just write here show and let me remove this too. So now if I'm executing it, on execution you can see that I am getting unident doesn't match with an indentation label. So if you see here, now it's correct, right? So here you can see that I am getting here the travel amount for the object even as 20,000 and for the PF 5,000. Similarly, you can also do it for employee 2, that is E2. So let me just write here E2 dot F1 dot show. So you can see that it's coming. So this is the basic idea about the inner class. So let's start with inheritance. It is one of the most important concept of object-oriented programming system. So basically here a derived class or you can say subclass acquires the properties and behavior from a base class. The best example can be of parents and their child. A child acquires all the properties from its father. And you can take an example of let's suppose car. If we are having a base class as car, so car will have the attributes like tires, then brakes, driving seat, lights, and then I create a subclass, let's suppose BMW. So we know that BMW will be also having a tire, then light, brakes, driving seat and all, right? So I can create a class as car and then I will create a class as BMW. So BMW will be my derived class and then car will be my base class. So this derived class will acquire all the properties and behavior from the base class. And also if you're talking about the behavior that is method, so I can create a method, let's suppose that car can start and stop, right? So these methods can also be acquired by the derived class. So I've already given you the example, but here you can see that we are having parent, base or superclass. So it is a class whose properties are acquired by the derived class. For example, I have created a class whose name is car, right? Now, coming to the child derived subclass, it is a class that acquires properties from another class. So the example was BMW. BMW was a derived class which is inheriting the properties from the parent class. So this is the basic idea about inheritance. We are having different types of inheritance. So let's see some inheritance example. So we are having single inheritance. So what happens here? Here the derived class is inherited by only one parent class, right? So here you can see that I am having one parent class as X and this is a Y. This is my child class or you can say subclass and it is inheriting the property from its parent class. So let's see it in the coding implementation. So let me write here inheritance. Now what I will do here, I'll create a class Let's suppose class name is car itself, and then I'll create a method inside this class. So I'll just write here def, and let me write the method name as x1, and inside this I will write self parameter. Now what I will do, I'll just write here print. This is the base class, and then I will give hyphen car. Now this is my class whose name is car. So now what I will do, I will create another class. So I'll just write here class. Let me take the name here Audi. Now I want to make this my derived class. So as we know that in the formal definition that derived class will acquire all the properties and behaviors from its parent or subclass. So what I will do here, inside this I will just write here car. Now I will also create a function here def x2, and then I will write here self, and let me print here this is a derived class, or you can say subclass, and I will just write here Audi. Now as we know that if you are creating a class, so class is having the object, so let's create an object of derived class. So as I told you that Audi is a derived or the subclass, so it will acquire the properties of base class, that is car. So for that I will just write here a1 dot x1. So on execution you will see that my output is coming. So output shows that Audi class has acquired the properties and behaviors of class car. Now if I'm writing here a1 dot x2, so obviously this is the function, or you can say method, inside my derived class itself, right? So it will print. So it's easy. So this is the basic idea about the inheritance, or let me write here single inheritance. So after single inheritance, now let's see multiple inheritance. So basically in multiple inheritance, a single derived class is inherited from two or more base classes. So basically you can see here X and Y are the base classes and Z is my derived classes. So Z will inherit the properties from X as well as Y class. So let's implement into the coding example. So now coming to the code, what I will do here, I will first write multiple inheritance. And let me just copy and paste this. So as I told you that in multiple inheritance, a class is inherited from two or more base classes, right? So let me create here one more class, and I will write here class vehicle, and then I will just write here method inside this class. So I'll just write here, let's suppose x2, and I will write here self, and inside this method I will write print. I will also write this is the base class, and hyphen and then vehicle. So we know that car and vehicle are the base class, right? And Audi is here the derived class. So Audi will inherit the properties from car as well as vehicle. So how to do that? I will just write here car, comma, and then I will write here vehicle. And let me change the function name here as x3. And this is a derived class as Audi. Now what I will do here? Now I will write here a1.x1 and a1.x2. So on execution, you can see that class Audi is inheriting the properties from class car as well as vehicle. So this is the basic idea about multiple inheritance. So the next inheritance that we are having is multi-level inheritance. So I will give you the simple definition of multi-level inheritance. Here a class inherits the features from more than one parent class. Then you might have a question, then what's the difference between multi-level inheritance and single inheritance? So in single inheritance, a class acquires the properties from one particular class. But here, a class can acquire the properties or features from more than one parent class. So let's jump into the definition here. A derived class inherits a base class, and the derived class also serves as the base class for the other classes, right? Each derived class inherits all of the attributes of its base class in this case. So here if you see x and y, x is the base class for y. Similarly, so now here talking about z here, z can acquire the properties of x as well as y here. So let's see into the coding example. So I will write here multi-level inheritance. So let me copy and paste this. So I'll just copy and then paste it here. Now, what will happen here? I will just remove this and I will write here vehicle. Let me remove here the base. So if you see here, this is my class whose name is car, right? And this is vehicle. So what will happen here? Vehicle will acquire some properties from car because I will put car here inside this vehicle. Now I'm writing here Audi, and Audi will acquire the properties from vehicle as well as car. So if you see here, let me remove all this thing. First, I will create an object of vehicle. So I will just write here v1 is equal to vehicle. Now if I'm writing here v1 dot x1, so on execution you can see that name vehicle is not defined. Yeah, so here let me correct the name. So on execution if you see here, I am getting this is the class car. So that means this vehicle class is inheriting the properties or methods from this class car, right? Now after this what I will do here, I'll create the object of this Audi. So I'll just write here a1 is equal to Audi, right? So what I will do now, I will write here a1 dot x2, and on execution you can see that I'm getting this is the class vehicle. But as I told you that this Audi can also acquire the properties of this class car. So what I will do here, if I'm writing here a1 dot x1, so on execution you can see that I'm getting my output, this is the class car. So basically the basic and formal definition of multi-level inheritance is that a class can acquire the features from more than one parent class. So this is the basic idea about multi-level inheritance. So the best way is to relate with the family generation. So let's suppose that this class is a son, this class is a father, and this one is a grandfather. So generation by generation. So you can say that the child is acquiring the properties from its father as well as grandfather. So this is the basic idea to understand multi-level inheritance. So now let's start with abstract class. So what is an abstract class? So an abstract class is a class that contains at least one abstract method. So there must be at least one abstract method, right? Also, if you're talking about abstract class, then you can't create an object for abstract class, although it can be inherited. So now, when it comes to Python, by default, Python doesn't support abstract classes. So in order to that, you have to import the module. So the module we are having is from abc import abc comma abstract method. So what is ABC here? ABC is abstract base classes. So after getting basic idea about abstract class, now let's see the implementation. So why we are waiting for? Let's start with coding. So I'll just write here abstract class, and let me comment it down. So first let me create a normal class. So I'll just write here class and normal class. Let's suppose I'm giving the name as a student. So this is my normal class, right? But we know that we have to import the module here. In order to make it abstract class, I will import the module here from abc import abc comma abstract method. Now what I will do basically, so this is a class student and inside this I will write A, B, C. So basically now this is my abstract class. An abstract class will have at least one abstract method. So I will write here at the rate abstract method. So what does it mean? It basically tells the compiler, hey, this method is abstract method. Now I will just write here def and let me give the method name as function1. And now inside this I will just write here self and I will write here pass. So that means this method doesn't contain anything. Now, as I already told you that you can't create an object for an abstract class. So let's see here. So if I'm writing here s1 is equal to student, and now if I am just clicking on this run button, you can see that it's showing that can't instantiate abstract class student with abstract method function because we cannot create an object for the abstract class. However, we can inherit it. So let's see. Now, after this, let me just copy and paste. So if you see here, I will create one more class and I will give the name, let's suppose Tony. And now I will inherit abstract class. So I will just write here student. Now let me give here the function as def function2. And if I'm writing here self and I'm writing here, let's suppose print attack. And now I will just create an object for this class Tony. So I'll just write here t1 is equal to Tony and I'll just write here t1 dot function2 and on execution you can see that I'm getting an error. So now the question arises that why we are getting an error, because we know that we can inherit abstract class, right? So the answer is yes, you can use, but method name of the class that is inheriting, that is Tony class, must be same as the abstract class. So here if you see that function name is function1, right? Here function2, we are getting an error. But what if I am writing here function1? So here on execution, you can see that we are getting the output. Now, you might have a question then how we can create multiple methods, because a class can contain multiple methods. The answer is again yes, you can use it. So now if I'm writing here def, let's suppose function2, and once again if I'm writing here, let's suppose this time I'm writing here self and then I'm giving ID and then I'm also writing here department. So now what I will do here, I will just write here self dot id is equal to id and I will write here self dot department is equal to department. And what can I do here? In this function1, let me give some more attribute. I will just write here fees and then I will just replace print function with self dot fees is equal to fees. Now what I will do here, I will just write here instead of fees, let's suppose I will write here 50,000 and I will once again write here t1 dot function2. I will write here id as 1 and then department as, let's suppose, as content. But again I want to print this information, so what I will do here, I will write here print and inside this print function I will write here t1 dot fees and here I will write once again print function and I will write here t1 dot id. Yeah, so on execution you can see that I am getting t1 dot fees as 50,000 and t1 dot id as 1. Let me print this. department 2. So I'll just write t1 dot department, and on execution you can see that I'm getting content. Now if you are changing it from function 2, and if you are writing here function 1, right? So after this, let me change this to also. So I'll just write here function 2, and then I will write here t1 dot fees, right? Cool, everything. Then we are having t1 dot function 1 here, and now it's good to go. So on execution, you can see that I'm getting my output. So you have to keep one thing in your mind, that you have to use the abstract method name at least once, right? While inheriting. So here you can see that the Tony is the class which is inheriting from this student, right? So I should have at least one method whose name must be same as the abstract method. So here I'm having the function 1 method name, and here also I'm having function 1. So this is the same at least. So on execution, you can see that we are getting the output. Now if you want to create several functions, you can do it. Let me change here. Control C, Control V, and now I will write here function 3, and instead of ID department, let me give the age. So let me write here self.age is equal to age. Now once again I will just write here t1 dot function 3, let the age be 25, and then just print the age. So I will just write t1 dot age, and on execution you can see that I'm getting the age as 25. So this is the basic idea about abstract class. So let's take a quick recap for this Python classes. So we have started it by knowing what is classes, then we have seen object. After that, we learned the concept of constructor, that in Python we are having an init method. After knowing constructor, then we jumped into the inner class, which is basically a class inside a class, or you can say a nested class. Moving further, we are having the concept of inheritance, which is the most important part of object-oriented programming system. We have seen different types of inheritance, such as single inheritance, multiple inheritance, and multi-level inheritance. And at last, we have learned about abstract classes. So basically Python doesn't support abstract class by default. So we need to import the module, that is from ABC import ABC comma abstract method. So this is the basic idea about Python classes.
If you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, I want to request you to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so that you don't miss out any new updates or video releases from Great Learning. If you enjoy this video, show us some love and like this video. Knowledge increases by sharing, so make sure you share this video with your friends and colleagues. Make sure to comment on the video any queries or suggestions, and I will also respond to your comments.